Get your questions ready about fintech. And let me introduce the experts. So the moderator of the discussion is Sergey Lukashkin, Director of Digital Transformation at VTB. Vasily Kuznetsov, founder of SweetCard, and Eldar Bagapov, managing partner of Klarna. Nice. Narnobel or Nalabel? Narnobel Ventures. Sorry about that. Well, we'll get to know you better while you start talking. Okay, gentlemen, you might start. You have 30 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for introducing us. As you can see today, we have representatives from all fintech participants of the market. So we see startup and representative from corporation. So we see many successful startups in the market and in Russia too. For example, N26, Revolut, Klarna, I can say TalkBank in Russia. So Eldar, my first question for you. Is fintech interesting for investment today? Do you think the fintech market is really interesting right now, and what do you think about it?
Well, yes, I do believe that fintech market is very interesting for investors, and it has been for several years. In fact, we have several investments which are doing really well. We have two companies we invested in fintech that returned the fund already, both of them. So yeah, we are very happy about fintech in general. However, the fintech trend has been going for several years, and one might think that a lot of the big companies has already been created and it's more difficult now, but I do believe there is still plenty of opportunity for innovation and creation of new exciting businesses.
Eldar, is the Russian fintech market different from the rest of the world?
Yes, Russia is very different from the rest of the world in many respects, and fintech is also one of them. I believe one of the greatest differentiators of Russian market is the fact that we missed 70s and 80s where a lot of financial infrastructure in the rest of the world was created, so we don't have the technology debt that the rest of the world has, and that has allowed Russia to create a lot of new innovative companies like Kiwi, Tinkoff, which could be classified as startups, but are already big companies now, huge companies that have been able to succeed because of the lack of established infrastructure in the market.
Okay.
Can I add something from the founder side? I don't see that fintech is something interesting for Russian investors, because when they say that fintech is interesting, in most of the cases they talk about some other markets, but not Russia. You can't see so many successful stories here, and that's why a company in Russia, startup in Russia, have to be profitable, just at the beginning, and it very limits your ability to grow because you spend time on getting things done to get the profit, and only after like 3-5 years you can then look at other markets. If you look at other markets like US guys, we talk with them a lot. The company the same size, but they have plenty of offers from the investors, and they get it like dozens of millions of dollars in investment, and they're not limited with money. So they, from the beginning, they look at other market. They think global, etc. So for Russian startup, it's quite difficult to go out from that, to like think out of the box, out of the Russian market, so to go global. But we will anyway.
Yeah. I think Yeah, they do. Okay, so last week at Finopolis, Chris Skinner, who wrote a lot of books about banks, about the future, he said that banks are not disrupted by fintech companies, also banks are digitalized or going to innovation. Vasily, what do you think about the role of startup in fintech and financial ecosystem? Can small startup be useful for a large bank?
Well, first of all, I think that big banks are disrupted by big tech companies. And we pay by the phone or by QR code, not because of Sberbank, because of Alipay and Apple Pay. So I think that the main challenge for them is there, and the main fight is not for just the payment, the way you pay, but for the wallet of the customer, for the advertising budget that you can sell to a brands. And in this big fight, the startup in Russia have to help to someone, to the banks, to solve the challenges that they face in this big battle. And then you can find your niche to be successful.
Okay, so startups can be useful for banks, and they can help banks to see a lot of things which bank can't see, but they will see if they work with startup. Okay,
but the role of startup to bring ready for the market technology to the bank, and in very competitive environment, because you if some sphere is interesting, so there are several startups and there are competition. And very bright teams fight for the right to work with the corporate. So the corporate, instead of doing something inside, can bring good startups, give them a chance to implement the technology and see the results in a very short period of time. So that's one of the main idea of cooperation of startups and corporations, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. From corporate side, I can say that we work with startups in pilot projects and doing we would call it foresight projects. And for us, it's not it's some kind of proof of technology projects, but if we find some interesting technology or some interesting business cases, we can use it for our banking work, and we happy to work with major startups which can give not only technologies but their own expertise from the market. So I absolutely agree with you. My next question for Eldar. Can you give an example of startup in which you invested, and what the reason for their success is, if they are successful already?
I can talk about them for a long time, and we obviously don't have time budget for that, so I'll try to be brief. We try to look at companies that invent, especially in fintech, that invent new business models that are enabled by new emerging technology. One example is a US company that does factoring of wages for people, so people can get access to their earned wages immediately when they need them, and that completely changes the dynamic of risk profiling of the clients, because you shift the risk from the individual to a corporation. And another example is a company we invested in Germany that uses the new technology of remote KYC and to enable depositors in rich countries like Germany and UK to deposit money in banks in ECB, poorer ECB countries like Romania, which offer higher deposit interest rates. And this is enabled purely by technology. And it creates a very good incentive structure for the clients because they're able to get higher interest rates with the same European Central Bank deposit protections like in Germany.
So it's not about technology, it's more about use cases.
In the first case, it's absolutely about use cases. And the second one, it's a use case enabled by technology because it's the technology of remote KYC, like facial recognition and stuff like this, that allows you to remotely open a deposit in a Romanian bank because a German pensioner would not go to Romania to open a deposit account before.
Okay, so they start from the use cases and go to technology. Vasily, you are participating in our acceleration program. So what do you think about corporate acceleration projects and products and participating in accelerators?
Just a few words about the previous experience. We work with more than 20 banks. And they're okay, but it took like 5 years to do these projects. And the average time from 3 to 6 months. In some cases, it can be like 2 years long. And the champion that we had in this race was Home Credit, and it was during one of the accelerator that we participated. It was 1 month, just 1 month. So we think that it's acceleration helps bank to focus in a certain time to bring all the participants in one room. So you have the feedback from all the main departments. You can find the real client that can bring your solution to the company, to the market. And I think it's very interesting and like game-changing experience that we see right now. I think that our advice to all the startups is to participate in accelerators which are launched by the big players.
Dar, what venture capital is thinking about corporate acceleration programs?
To be honest, I'm more skeptical about accelerators because although they are very useful and provide a very useful service to the startups, sometimes too much of a good thing can be a bad thing because you get those startups which focus on the process more than the result. And for them, the end goal is getting into the accelerator, not actually getting a client at the end of it. So when you work with accelerators, you have to be very clear of what you need to get out of it and work very hard to get that thing. Don't think that getting into accelerator is a success factor that you can put on your resume. It's not. The client at the end is the success.
But I think that you are part of environment which spend more time on process rather on results. I mean, the whole infrastructure around the fintech, because for sure the number of conferences, the budget of these conferences is much higher than the investment in fintech in Russia. So I think that we should cancel some of them and give this money to startups, and we'll see the results.
Okay, I can say that B2B has already launched the second acceleration program, and you could heard about it in 3 p.m. In this room. So we see a good effect from acceleration program. In the last accelerator, we had 4 successful projects, or maybe 5 successful projects. So we continue to do this. Okay, Ildar, let's talk about global market. Which markets look more interesting for fintech? United States, CIS, Asia, MENA. What do you think about it?
I think there are pluses and minuses on all the markets. Obviously, US is a huge market, and if you can make it there, you can be happy with just being successful there. At the same time, the Chinese market is showing that it's huge, it's very dynamic, and it produces a lot of innovation in fintech, especially like Alipay and Financial and companies like that, which are obviously very successful. I think that Russia is also a very interesting market, and you get companies like Tinkoff here, which have been very successful. We have one portfolio company in Russia called Direct Credit, which is a credit broker, which is very successful as well. So I think that if you adapt your business model to a market, you can succeed anywhere. And having said that, from the investor's point of view, especially Russian investor, I do believe that we have difficulty now going into European and American markets because of the difficult political situation. And I agree with Vasily that there are a lot of good companies here, and capital can be deployed here quite successfully. So I think that one of the major challenges and opportunities of the coming years would be refocus of the local investors on the local market.
Okay, Vasily, what do you think?
From the startup perspective, when you start to think about it, you might think that CIS is the best choice, and Russian companies very often receive some offers, and you can meet some guys from other CIS countries during the conferences. So they are open and they invite, but I don't think that it somehow will affect your business, because it's the same from the valuation point of view. It's the same, so you don't get this. So you're still like a Russian company, and your valuation will be low. So I think that European markets and European banks, we talk with them, they're very conservative and very slow. If you think that Russian banks are slow, then you should go to Europe, and then you'll see. Asia is the place to be, I think, because many Russian startups, they start to build successful business there, and it became the main part of their business portfolio. And US, I think that US is quite competitive and mature market, but if you can succeed there, so then you can be successful globally. So Asia is number one, I think.
Okay, I think Asia is number one for choice for startup. Yeah. Okay, but I know one of the company, the friend of mine, they go to Singapore and try to build their startups in security. So they said that the Singapore banks are not so mature in digital projects and process than Russian banks. So I think we are really good in digital today, because I talk about digital with European partners and banks, with Asian banks, and I see that we are really good in mobile banking.
We are the best.
Yeah, I think we are the best. Yeah, we can say that. Okay, so let's move to startup and funding. Eldar, what do you expect from startup when they come you to funding some money?
We expect them to be hugely profitable and valuable and return our funds several times over. But to be serious, one of the main questions that we ask, especially of fintech companies, is defensibility, because, as I said before, one of the defining characteristics of fintech companies is a new business model, which can, unlike a purely deep tech companies, a new business model can be very easily replicated once it's out in the market. And a huge bank like VTB or Sberbank or Tinkoff, with a huge customer base, they can very easily roll out the same product on existing customer base and decimate your company. So a very important thing is defensibility. How are you going to compete with established players who already have the client base and who can roll out new products to this client base very cheaply. So that's the most important question I think that we ask of fintech companies who are coming to us.
And customer acquisition costs, yes, about that. Okay, Vasily,
Yeah,
can you give some advice about startups in fintech?
Yeah, just let me add to the previous answer. I think that this approach, because investors give the money in something they believe, and they believe that it's quite difficult to fight with the banks, like in direct fight, face to face. So that's why in Russia we see that B2B models or B2B2C models can be successful for startups in fintech, and only a few companies that are successful who doing like B2C business and started like 3 years ago. I think if and independent company that don't belongs to some big corporations. So in order to do that, you have to find some value that you can bring to the bank. So it's the cooperation, not the competition. So we see a lot of startups that bring really interesting, ready to use ideas to the banks that they implement like on a regular basis. And for the startups, the advice is to find something like this, some solution that can help to the existing players. And one of field where you can find it is the platforms and marketplace, where big bank can't do something alone, when they need a cooperation with environments, with other banks. So if you find the solution that helps them all together to solve the problem, so that's the case. So it's our case actually, because we are a platform that helps to the banks and many retailers to find each other in one place, and it's bring more value to any bank than when they're a group of banks than when they do it alone. So that would be the advice. And the other advice, I think that there are different types of investors in the Russian market. We see many of them. And the advice is not, please don't take the toxic money. It's very important. The partner, the investor, it's crucial for the success. We saw a lot of examples where great teams with great ideas started very interesting business, but because of the investors, they finally failed because at some stage they didn't find money or they have some conflict. So it's quite important to have the right partner when you go such a difficult way up when you're a startup.
So we can say that building digital platform is a mainstream today, just to our discussion. Okay, so we can say that fintech and startups are interesting today, and you can invest in it. You need to collaborate with the banks and the huge players on this market to be successful. And of course, banks have resources and startups have ideas, so we can build something interesting together. And you can go to our acceleration program, I think, next year. So I think we have about 6 minutes for a question from the audience. If you want, you can ask corporate venture investor or startup. Do you have some questions from the audience? Okay, please. Do you have a microphone? No? Just like I can give you.
Just because there are no questions, I'll ask some question. So in this battle between big tech and big banks, how do you see next 5 years and maybe next 15 years?
Great question. So,
it's the game name is like music chair, So they go around in one chair. So they fight. It's not. It's like the producer of the phone, mobile operators, it's not only Apple and Google with the banks. There are a huge number of companies there, and all of them try to engage customers, and they try to build the ecosystems, and it will continue. So so they will try to, what I know for sure. So any purchase you make, so they will make it a counter offer, and it will not only from the Google, it will be from the Apple, from any payment mechanism that you're going to use, QR code, whatever. So everyone will add you something, or offer you something to buy with some other brands, some other merchants, etc. So and it will be somehow accelerated. I mean, because who Apple Pay or Google or mobile phone operator or your bank, who will be the first? So I think that they will do it smarter, more targeted, and they will try to bring more value and less friction to all these things. I think that they have more chances to beat in this battle for sure, and some banks will survive.
I can say that
Just not all of them. Because the banks will stay the source of the clients. I mean, because somebody have to do the processing, etc. They sign the salary contracts, so they control this. I mean, somehow, especially state-owned banks. So it will be with them in the next 5 years. I think there's nothing will be changed. But the engagement of the customers, this is the real battlefield, because social networks and messengers and some other sources, they know how to engage the customer. And this is something that banks still don't, but they try hard to do it right now. So and this will accelerate it in.
I don't believe that it's a correct way to pose this question, who will survive and who will not. I think that we're now in an era where the customer is the king, and whoever knows more about the customer will extract more value from the customer. So banks have unique position here because they have all the transactional data at their disposal. Mobile phone operators have the IT usage data. The retailers have the spending patterns. So there are lots of different players who have different data, and by merging them together, that's where the magic happens. So I think the future is not in the competition between those players, it's actually in cooperation between them, and that's why we see a lot of ecosystems evolving. Like Sberbank is working very hard to create an ecosystem just for this, so they can compete with Googles and Facebooks on the level of the deep knowledge about the customer.
Okay, I can tell you that it's a really important question. Thank you for it. I agree with Vasily that banks go to be in ecosystems, but we also have a lot of competitors, especially in payment side. So it's a lot of payment solution today. But if we talk about some about mortgage, for example, or something else, the only banks have the knowledge, they have a history, they know how to do, how to give mortgage, for example, but nobody knows how to do this properly and with the same risks. So I think there was a mix, there will be a mix with big tech, banks, retailers, and something else, as Eldar says. So I think the future is an ecosystem everywhere. Bank going to be ecosystem, big tech going to be ecosystem, retailers going to be ecosystem. Everybody wants to be an ecosystem today. So I think the 5 years perspective is to all competitors in the market going to be not only ecosystem, but sometimes they collaborate with each other to give the customer more goods, products, services, and so on. So
yeah, and under this pressure, everybody is more open for cooperation. So.
yes, and we could talk about open innovation also in this field, but we have no time. Okay, thank you very much for our panelists. Thank you for audience for the questions. So I think we go to the next panel. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
You very much.